The industrial freezer hummed behind me, a low mechanical drone that had become the soundtrack to my exhaustion. My feet ached in shoes held together by duct tape and stubborn hope. The kind of hope that keeps you standing through a double shift when your body begs to collapse. The kitchen of Aurelio's smelled like garlic, expensive wine, and the dreams I'd abandoned 3 years ago when reality came knocking with eviction notices and medical bills. I was invisible here. That's what happens when you're just another waitress in a city that churns through people like meat through a grinder. The other servers barely looked at me anymore. I was the girl who took the worst shifts, who never complained, who faded into the white noise of clattering plates and shouted orders. My reflection in the stainless steel prep table showed a woman I barely recognized. Hollow cheeks, dark circles under green eyes that used to sparkle with something other than desperation, hair pulled back so tight it gave me headaches. "Table 12 needs water," Marco barked from the pass, not bothering to look up from the risotto he was plating with the precision of a surgeon. Table 12. The private section. The one we weren't supposed to talk about. I grabbed the crystal pitcher, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, I was too numb for that, but from the 3 cups of burnt coffee that were the only thing keeping me vertical. The main dining room was a symphony of wealth. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Silk napkins. The murmur of conversations in languages I'd never learned because college had been another casualty of survival. The private dining section was separated by frosted glass doors with brass handles that felt cold even through the heat of my perpetual anxiety. I pushed through, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He sat with his back to the wall. Of course he did. Men like him never sat with their backs to doors. The first thing I noticed was his hands. Elegant, powerful, wrapped around a glass of bourbon, like he was weighing whether to drink it or crush it. Then the suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. The kind that whispered money in a language only the wealthy understood. His cologne reached me before I got within 10 feet. Sandalwood, and something darker. Something that made my pulse quicken in a way that felt dangerous. 2 men flanked him at adjacent tables. Not eating, not relaxed. Their eyes tracked my every movement with the intensity of predators calculating distance and velocity. The one on the left had a scar through his eyebrow that told stories I didn't want to hear. The one on the right kept his hand inside his jacket, and I knew with cold certainty it wasn't resting on his phone. "Water," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Years of swallowing pride and fear had taught me how to fake composure. He looked up. God, those eyes, dark brown, almost black in the dim candlelight, and ancient in a way that had nothing to do with age. They assessed me with the same casual thoroughness one might use to evaluate a chess piece, noting value, position, potential utility. His face was all sharp angles and controlled power, a jaw that looked carved from marble, lips pressed into a line that might have been amusement or contempt. Dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, swept back in a style that screamed old money and older violence. "Leave it," he said. His voice was low, textured like smoke over gravel, with an accent that placed him somewhere between old-world sophistication and new-world ruthlessness. Not a request. A command delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been disobeyed. I set the pitcher down, my hand not quite steady. A drop of condensation rolled down the crystal, catching the light. I should have left. Should have nodded and disappeared back into my safe invisibility. Instead, I found myself frozen, caught in the gravity well of his presence. "You're new," he said, though it wasn't a question. 3 years, I corrected before I could stop myself. "Stupid. You don't correct men like him. I mean, I've worked here 3 years. I'm not new. Sir." Something flickered across his face. Interest, maybe. Or the kind of amusement a cat might feel before toying with a mouse. 3 years, and I've never seen you." He lifted his glass, took a measured sip. His eyes never left mine. Curious. "I usually work the early shift, breakfast. Lunch, my throat felt dry. The quiet hours." "Ah." He set down the glass with precise care. "You hide during the day. Smart." The way he said it made my skin prickle. Like he understood something about me I'd never spoken aloud. Like he could see through the uniform and the exhaustion, to the fear that lived in my bones. "I don't hide," I said, which was a lie so transparent even I didn't believe it. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, something more predatory. "Everyone hides, Kara. The question is what from?" Marco's voice crackled through the server's earpiece I'd forgotten I was wearing. "Sophia, table 7 needs..." I reached up to turn it off, my hand moving to my ear, and that's when everything went wrong. My elbow caught the edge of the pitcher. Time slowed to that horrible syrup-thick pace that accompanies disasters you can see coming but can't stop. The crystal tipped. Water arced through the air in a perfect crystalline wave, catching the candlelight like liquid diamonds. And then it was all over him. Over his perfect suit. Over the documents spread on the table. Documents I now saw were covered in numbers and names and photographs. Over the phone that looked expensive enough to fund my rent for 6 months. The room went silent, not the comfortable silence of before, but the kind that precedes violence. The 2 guards were on their feet instantly, hands inside jackets, bodies coiled like springs. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. He sat perfectly still. Water dripped from his lapel onto the leather seat. A droplet rolled down his cheek like a tear, though nothing about him suggested he'd ever cried. The documents were ruined, ink bleeding across faces I didn't recognize but instinctively knew I shouldn't have seen. My voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I didn't... It was an accident. Please, He raised one hand, just one hand, barely lifting it from the table. The guards froze. The entire universe seemed to freeze. "Come here," he said softly. Every survival instinct I'd honed over 3 years of barely staying afloat screamed at me to run. But my feet moved forward anyway, carrying me closer to him, close enough to smell the bourbon on his breath and the water soaking into expensive fabric, close enough to see that his eyes weren't quite black, but a brown so dark it swallowed light. "Look at me." I was looking at him. I couldn't do anything else. "What's your name?" "Sophia." It came out as a whisper. "Sophia Mitchell." He stood slowly, unfolding from the chair with the controlled grace of someone who'd trained their body into a weapon. He was taller than I'd thought, broad-shouldered, built like violence wrapped in silk. Water dripped from his suit onto my shoes, my pathetic duct-taped shoes. "Sophia Mitchell," he repeated, like he was tasting my name, testing it, filing it away in some mental database I desperately didn't want to be part of. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head. Another lie. I didn't know his name, but I knew what he was. "You didn't work in this neighborhood for 3 years, without learning to recognize the men who owned it, in ways that had nothing to do with property deeds." He reached into his jacket, his guards tensed, and pulled out a handkerchief, not to wipe himself. He handed it to me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "You're trembling," he observed clinically. "I'm scared," I said, because what was the point of lying? Good. He stepped closer, invading my space in a way that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "Fear keeps you alive, Sophia Mitchell. Remember that." His hand came up and I flinched. But he didn't strike me. Instead, his fingers, surprisingly gentle, tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "This suit cost $15,000, he said conversationally. "These documents were irreplaceable. My phone contained information worth more than this restaurant. Do you understand what you've done?" Tears burned behind my eyes. I wouldn't let them fall. I'd cried enough in bathroom stalls and empty apartments. Not here, not in front of him. "I'll pay for it," I said, which was absurd, laughable. I had $73 in my checking account and medical debt that would outlive me. "I'll work it off. Extra shifts. Please, I need this job. Shh." His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and the intimacy of it shocked me into silence. "I don't want your money, Kara." The way he said it made something cold slide down my spine. "Then what?" "Marco!" His voice cracked like a whip. Not loud, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. The kitchen manager appeared in the doorway within seconds, face pale. "Who approved this one working my section?" "Sir, she was the only one available for..." "Fire her." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marco nodded once, quickly, and disappeared. I stood there, my entire world collapsing in on itself like a dying star. No job, no rent, no medication for my mother, no. Wait. His hand was still on my chin. Not yet. He leaned close, so close I could count his eyelashes, see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, smell the expensive cologne mixing with bourbon and something uniquely him. "You owe me a debt, Sophia Mitchell," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear, and I always collect. I didn't remember leaving the restaurant. One moment I was standing in that private dining room, drowning in the dark gravity of his presence, and the next I was on the street corner 3 blocks away, gasping for air like I'd been held underwater. The night had turned cold, or maybe I was just shaking so hard I couldn't tell the difference anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Marco. "Don't come back. Your final check will be mailed." Just like that. 3 years reduced to a text message and a promise of a paycheck that wouldn't cover even half of next week's bills. I leaned against the brick wall of a closed convenience store, the rough texture scraping through my thin uniform, and tried to remember how to breathe, tried to remember why I kept fighting when the universe clearly wanted me to surrender. The manila envelope appeared in my vision before I registered the person holding it. "Miss Mitchell." The voice was crisp, professional, belonging to a woman in her 40s wearing a designer pantsuit and an expression that suggested she'd seen too much to be shocked by anything. She had sharp features, hair pulled back in an immaculate bun, and eyes that calculated and dismissed me in the same glance. One of his people. She had that same predatory stillness. "He doesn't like loose ends," she continued, extending the envelope. "This is your severance. Consider it generous." I didn't take it. "I don't want his money." Her eyebrow arched. "That's remarkably stupid, but noted. However, you don't have a choice. You owe him a debt, Miss Mitchell. He'll decide when and how you pay it. Until then, this keeps you alive and accessible." "I don't understand. What does he want from me? If I knew that, I'd sleep better." She thrust the envelope into my hands. The weight of it made my stomach turn. "He'll send for you when he's ready. In the meantime, don't leave the city. Don't do anything interesting. Just exist. Quietly." She turned to leave, heels clicking against the pavement with military precision. "Wait, what's his name? Who is he?" She paused, glanced back over her shoulder. "You really don't know." A laugh, dry as dead leaves. "That's either refreshing or tragic, Dante Caruso. And if you're smart, you'll forget you ever met him." She disappeared into a black sedan that materialized from the shadows like it had been waiting there all along. I watched the taillights fade, then looked down at the envelope, heavy, thick. I opened it with trembling fingers. Cash. Stacks of it. More money than I'd seen in years. A note in bold, slanted handwriting. "Consider this an advance on your debt. I'll be in touch. DC." Underneath, a business card, black, embossed, just a phone number in silver lettering. I should have thrown it away. Should have taken the money to the police and told them about the documents I'd seen, the guns I'd noticed, the casual way his presence commanded absolute obedience. Instead, I folded the bills carefully, slipped the card into my pocket, and walked the 45 minutes home because I couldn't afford the bus and refused to spend his money on something so trivial. My apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. The stairs creaked, the hallway smelled like mildew and Mrs. Chen's cooking, and my door stuck in the frame from humidity and neglect. Home, such as it was. I counted the money by the light of a single lamp. The overhead had burned out last month, and I couldn't afford to replace it. $5,000. $5,000 that felt like a chain wrapping around my throat. With each bill I counted. My mother's photo watched me from the dresser. Younger, healthier, before the cancer had carved her down to paper-thin skin and hollow eyes. She was still fighting in that hospice facility across town, still holding on despite the doctors saying it was hopeless. The bills for her care sat in a drawer I couldn't bear to open anymore. Past due, sent to collections. A mountain of debt that this money could barely dent. I could pay 1 month, Maybe 2 if I rationed it carefully. And then what? What would Dante Caruso demand in return? Sleep didn't come. I lay in my narrow bed, watching shadows dance across the water-stained ceiling, replaying every moment in that dining room. His voice, his eyes, the way his thumb had brushed my lip like he owned it. Like he owned me. The next morning arrived with gray light and the sound of sirens. I pulled on my only pair of jeans, clean but worn through at the knees, and a sweater that had been my father's before he'd left when I was 12. The money sat on my table like an accusation. I needed a job. Desperately. But who would hire someone fired from Aurelio's? In this neighborhood, that restaurant was connected to everything, and everyone knew that getting fired from there meant you'd cross someone you shouldn't have crossed. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Mitchell. A male voice, clipped and efficient, not Dante's. A car will collect you at 10 a.m. Be ready. Wait, 10 a.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, pulse racing. This was it. Whatever debt he thought I owed, he was calling it in. I thought about running, packing the few things I owned and disappearing into another city where men like Dante Caruso couldn't find me. But that was a fantasy. Men like him had reached that extended beyond geography, and I had my mother. I couldn't leave her. At 9:45, I was dressed in the only nice clothes I owned. Black slacks I'd found at a thrift store, and a white blouse with a small stain on the cuff I tried to hide by rolling up the sleeves. I looked like someone playing dress-up in adult clothes. The mirror showed me a woman who didn't belong in Dante Caruso's world, and I wondered if that was exactly why he'd noticed me. The car arrived at precisely 10 a.m. Not a car, a vehicle, black, gleaming, windows so dark I couldn't see inside. The driver emerged, tall, built like a linebacker, wearing a suit that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than civilized. The one with the scar through his eyebrow from last night. Miss Mitchell. He opened the rear door. Please. The interior smelled like leather and money. I slid in, and the door closed with the solid thunk of German engineering. We pulled away from my building, leaving behind the only world I knew. Where are we going? I tried to keep my voice steady. Mr. Caruso has a matter that requires your attention. The driver's eyes found mine in the rearview mirror. I'd advise you to be cooperative. He doesn't like complications. We drove through the city, leaving my neighborhood behind for areas I'd only seen in magazines. Buildings grew taller, cleaner, more imposing. People on the streets wore clothes that cost more than my monthly rent used to be. We passed shops with windows displaying single handbags under spotlights, restaurants with waiting lists measured in months. Finally, we stopped in front of a high-rise that seemed to pierce the clouds, all glass and steel and arrogance. The driver led me through a marble lobby where a concierge nodded with the kind of deference reserved for royalty, into an elevator with mirrors on every surface that reflected my inadequacy from a dozen angles. We ascended in silence. The numbers climbed. 20, 30, 40. The penthouse button glowed red. The elevator opened directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment. A space. Vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city spread out like a kingdom awaiting its ruler. The floors were dark hardwood that gleamed like still water. Modern art I didn't understand hung on white walls, furniture that looked more like sculpture than anything meant for sitting. And standing by those windows, backlit by morning sun, was Dante Caruso. He'd changed. The ruined suit was gone, replaced by charcoal slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered. More human somehow, but no less dangerous. Sophia. He didn't turn around. Come here. My feet moved before my brain could protest. I walked across that gleaming floor, each step echoing in the vast space, until I stood beside him at the window. The city spread below us, small and manageable from this height. I'd never been so high up before. It made my stomach drop. Beautiful, isn't it? His voice was softer in the morning light, but no less commanding. From up here, everything seemed so ordered, so controllable. Why am I here? The question came out stronger than I felt. He turned then, and I was struck again by the intensity of his presence. In the restaurant, dimly lit, he'd been dangerous. Here, in the full light of day, he was devastating. The angles of his face were sharper, the lines around his eyes deeper, the power radiating from him almost visible. Because you saw something you shouldn't have. He reached into his pocket, pulled out one of the photographs from last night. Water damaged, but still visible. A man's face, marked with red X's. Do you recognize him? I looked, really looked, and felt ice flood my veins. I couldn't say it. Couldn't make it real by speaking it aloud. Your ex-boyfriend, Dante finished calmly. Ryan Mitchell. Or should I say, Ryan Torres. He's been using your name for the past 2 years. Did you know that? The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady myself. That's impossible. Ryan left. He just left. He left because he stole from me. Dante's voice was conversational, like he was discussing the weather. $500,000 and 3 kilos of product. He's been living quite well in Miami under your married name. Did you know you were technically married, Sophia? He forged your signature on the documents. Made you complicit. My legs gave out. I would have fallen if Dante hadn't moved with surprising speed, catching me by the elbow and guiding me to a leather sofa that probably cost more than my education would have. I didn't. Words failed. Thoughts scattered like startled birds. I know. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, studying me with those ancient eyes. I've had people investigating you since last night. You're exactly what you appear to be, a woman trying to survive, drowning in debt, loyal to a dying mother, invisible to a world that should have protected you. You're not part of his schemes. You're a victim. Then why am I here? His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Because Ryan Torres loves you, Sophia. Despite everything, he still loves you. He sends money to your mother's hospice every month. Did you know that? Anonymous payments that keep her in that facility. He's watching you from Miami, making sure you're okay. Horror crawled up my throat. He's been watching me, and he'll come back for you, eventually, when he thinks it's safe. Dante leaned back, casual predator at rest, which is exactly what I want. Understanding dawned like a sick sunrise. You want to use me as bait. I want to give you a choice. His correction was gentle but firm. Option 1. You walk out of here with that money I gave you. I'll erase your connection to Ryan. You'll never hear from me again. Your mother will receive 6 months of paid care, and then you're on your own. Ryan will likely find you eventually, and when he does, whatever happens is between you and him and the other people he's crossed. He paused, letting that future paint itself in my imagination. Stark, brutal, short. Option 2? You work for me. You help me draw Ryan out. In return, your mother receives care for as long as she needs it. Every medical bill paid. When this is over, you'll have enough money to start fresh anywhere you choose. You'll be under my protection, which means no one, not Ryan, not his associates, not anyone, will touch you. And if I say no to both, his expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. Then you're still involved, Sophia, but without my protection. The people Ryan stole from, I'm not the only one looking for him, and they're not as considerate as I am. A gilded cage. That's what he was offering. Golden bars and a comfortable prison, but a prison nonetheless. I thought of my mother, of the bills I couldn't pay, of Ryan's betrayal stretching across 2 years and half my life. I thought of the money that could save her, could give her comfort in whatever time she had left. I thought of the way Dante's thumb had brushed my lip, the possession in his touch, and wondered what price I'd really be paying. If I agree, I said slowly, what exactly would I have to do? His smile spread, satisfied and terrible. For now, just stay alive, Kara, and stay close to me. He stood, extended his hand like we were sealing a business deal. I looked at that hand, strong, scarred, capable of both creation and destruction, and knew that taking it would change everything. But what choice did I have? What choice had I ever had? I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and possessive and inescapable. "Welcome to my world, Sophia Mitchell," Dante Caruso said. "Try not to drown." The first week of my new life passed in a blur of gilded confusion. Dante installed me in an apartment 3 floors below his penthouse, still in his building, still under his watch. It was larger than anywhere I'd ever lived, with actual furniture that matched, and appliances that worked, and a view that made my old apartment seem like a cave by comparison. But the windows didn't open all the way, I noticed. Just enough for air, not enough for escape, for your safety. The woman in the pantsuit, her name was Victoria, apparently Dante's right hand, had explained while showing me around. "Mr. Caruso has enemies. Anyone associated with him becomes a target." A target. The word settled into my bones like winter cold. They'd moved my few possessions while I was signing papers I barely read. Documents that probably signed away pieces of my soul in legal language I didn't understand. My mother's photo now sat on a nightstand made of wood that felt like silk under my fingers. Everything else I owned fit in 2 boxes that looked pathetic in the walk-in closet designed for a wardrobe I didn't possess. "We'll fix that," Victoria had said, eyeing my thrift store clothes with barely concealed distaste. "Mr. Caruso has an image to maintain. You'll need appropriate attire." I wanted to argue. Wanted to say I wasn't a doll to be dressed up for his amusement, but the words died when I remembered my mother's face, the way pain carved lines around her eyes, and the promise of relief that Dante's money could buy. The next morning, a stylist arrived. Then another. They measured and tutted and transformed me with the efficiency of people accustomed to creating illusions. Designer clothes appeared in my closet, elegant, expensive, nothing like the person I saw in the mirror. They did something to my hair, something to my face with makeup I couldn't name. When they finished, I looked like someone who belonged in Dante's world. I hated that I liked it, hated the small thrill of seeing myself beautiful for the first time in years. Dante sent for me on the 3rd evening. Not a request. A summons delivered by the scarred guard whose name I'd learned was Marcus. He escorted me to the penthouse, his presence a constant reminder that I wasn't free, wasn't safe, wasn't anything but a piece in a game I didn't understand. The elevator doors opened to music. Classical, something Italian that spoke of tragedy and passion. Dante stood in his kitchen, an actual kitchen, all marble and stainless steel, cooking. The sight was so unexpected I froze. "You're staring," he said without turning around. He wore black slacks and a gray Henley that clung to his shoulders, his sleeves pushed up as he worked with practiced efficiency at the stove. "Close your mouth, Cara. You'll catch flies. You cook." The words escaped before I could stop them. "I do many things that would surprise you." He glanced over his shoulder, and his eyes traveled over me with an intensity that made my skin flush. "You look different. Better." "I look like someone else. You look like yourself. Just more visible." He turned back to whatever he was creating that smelled like heaven and garlic and things I couldn't afford to want. "Come. Sit." The dining table could have seated 12, but was set for 2, intimate despite the space. Candles flickered even though the sun hadn't fully set. Wine glasses caught the light like crystal promises of intoxication. I sat, feeling the unfamiliar silk of my new dress whisper against my skin. He brought plates. Pasta, handmade from the looks of it, with a sauce that made my stomach remind me I'd barely eaten in days. Bread that steamed when he tore it. Simple food made extraordinary by hands that knew violence but also, apparently, tenderness. "Eat," he commanded, settling across from me. "You're too thin. I've been busy surviving. Not anymore." He poured wine, red, rich, probably worth more than my old monthly salary. "Now you're busy living. There's a difference." I picked up my fork, and the first bite was a revelation. Flavors exploded across my tongue, complex and perfect, and made with a care that seemed at odds with everything else I knew about him. I couldn't stop the small sound of pleasure that escaped. His eyes darkened. "Good? Why are you doing this?" I set down my fork, the question burning more than hunger. The apartment, the clothes, I gestured at the absurdly perfect meal. "What do you want from me?" Dante took a sip of wine, considering. Direct. I appreciate that. He leaned back in his chair, all casual power. I told you. I need you to draw out Ryan, but that's not the complete truth. My heart hammered. Then what is? You interest me. He said it simply, like commenting on the weather. Last night in the restaurant, you should have cowered. Should have begged or cried or done what people always do when they realize they've crossed me. Instead, you met my eyes, scared but not broken, trembling but not defeated, and then you offered to pay for a suit worth more than you'd earn in a year. It was... He paused, searching for the word. Refreshing. So I'm what? Entertainment? Your leverage. Your bait. You're also becoming something else, though I don't think either of us is ready to name it yet. He stood, moved around the table with predatory grace, and suddenly he was behind me. His hands settled on my shoulders, warm through the thin fabric of my dress. You're safe here, Sophia, safer than you've been in years. All I ask in return is your cooperation and your honesty. Can you give me that? His thumbs pressed against the knots of tension in my shoulders, and I hated how good it felt, hated how my body betrayed me by relaxing into his touch. What if Ryan doesn't come? I managed. What if he's smart enough to stay away? He'll come. Dante's voice was certain, dark. Men like Ryan always come back for what they think belongs to them. And he thinks you belong to him. I don't belong to anyone. His hands tightened briefly, possessively. Keep telling yourself that, Kara. We both know you're lying. Days blurred into weeks. Dante's world swallowed me whole. A universe of luxury and violence existing in careful balance. I learned his routine. Mornings spent in his office on calls in Italian and languages I didn't recognize. Afternoons with meetings I wasn't privy to. Evenings that sometimes included me and sometimes didn't. When he was gone, Marcus, or one of the other guards, there were always guards, stayed close. Watching, protecting, imprisoning. Victoria came by with updates I half understood about movements and contacts and the situation in Miami. Every conversation a reminder that somewhere, Ryan was living a life built on betrayal while I sat in a golden cage, waiting. I visited my mother every Thursday. Dante insisted on it, insisted on sending a car and 2 guards and enough flowers to transform her small hospice room into a garden. She looked better. The new medications were working, the pain lines less severe. She smiled more, though she asked questions I couldn't answer. Where did the money come from, sweetheart? Her voice was paper-thin but persistent. These treatments. The private room. I know you don't have this kind of money. I got a better job. I lied. The words ash on my tongue. Don't worry about it, Mom. Just focus on getting better. She studied me with eyes that had watched me grow, that knew me better than anyone. You look different, scared. Are you in trouble? I'm fine. I took her hand, fragile as bird bones. Everything's going to be okay. Another lie. But what else could I say? That I'd sold myself to a Mafia boss to keep her alive, that I was bait for a man I'd once loved who'd destroyed me more thoroughly than poverty ever could. She squeezed my fingers weakly. Promise me something, Sophia. Promise me you'll choose yourself. Whatever this is, whatever you're doing, don't lose yourself trying to save me. I'm old. I'm sick. But you deserve to live. I promised, knowing I'd already broken that promise the moment I'd taken Dante's hand. The first crack in the routine came 5 weeks in. I was reading in my apartment, a book from Dante's extensive library, something in Italian I was slowly learning to understand with the tutor he'd hired, when Marcus appeared at my door, face grim. Mr. Caruso needs you, now. The urgency in his voice sent ice through my veins. I followed him to the elevator, up to the penthouse, where I found Dante standing by his windows again. But this time his posture was different. Tense, coiled, dangerous. He made contact, Dante said without preamble. Ryan sent a message to your old phone number. We've been monitoring it. He turned, and the look in his eyes made me step back. Pure predator. The veneer of civility stripped away to reveal the violence underneath. What did he say? He wants to meet you. Says he has something important to tell you. That he can explain everything. Dante's jaw clenched. He's in the city. Has been for 3 days, watching, waiting for the right moment. My mouth went dry. Where? The harbor. Pier 47, tomorrow night at 10. He moved toward me, each step deliberate. He thinks you're still living in that apartment, still working at the restaurant. He doesn't know about me, about this. His hand swept to encompass his world, his protection, his cage. What do you want me to do? I want you to meet him. Dante stopped inches away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, smell his cologne mixed with expensive whiskey and rage barely contained. I want you to wear a wire. I want you to get him talking, and when he's said enough to damn himself, I want you to step aside and let me handle the rest. You're going to kill him. Not a question. I'm going to make him pay for what he stole, what he destroyed. His hand came up, cupped my face with surprising gentleness. He used you, Sophia, made you complicit in his crimes. Put your name on documents that could have sent you to prison. Watched you struggle while he lived in luxury off stolen money. Does he deserve your protection? No. The answer was immediate and bitter. But killing him? Watching Dante execute someone I'd once loved, however foolishly? I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the touch achingly tender in contrast to the violence in his eyes. You're stronger than you think, Kara. Stronger than he ever deserved. And after? When Ryan's gone and you don't need me anymore? Something flickered across his face. An emotion I couldn't name, gone too quickly to identify. We'll discuss after when after comes. For now, focus on tomorrow, on staying safe, on doing what needs to be done. He pulled me against him, and I let him, hating myself for the way I fit against his chest, for the way his heartbeat steadied my own. His arms came around me, a cage and a sanctuary, and I wondered which one I wanted more. I have guards stationed around the pier, he murmured into my hair. Marcus will be close. I'll be closer. Nothing will happen to you, Sophia, I promise. Why do you care? The question escaped, small and desperate. I'm just leverage, just bait. His arms tightened. If that's what you need to believe to get through this, then believe it. But we both know it stopped being that simple weeks ago. He didn't say what it had become instead. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe I didn't want to know. That night, I lay in my expensive bed in my borrowed apartment, staring at the ceiling and thinking about choices, about the girl I'd been in that restaurant, invisible and exhausted, about the woman I was becoming under Dante's dangerous attention, about Ryan, who'd loved me once before betraying me so completely I'd forgotten what trust felt like. Tomorrow, I'd face the past. Tomorrow, I'd learn what I was truly capable of. Tomorrow, something would break. I just didn't know if it would be Ryan, Dante, or me. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I knew was Dante. Sleep, Kara. Tomorrow you'll need your strength. How did he know I was awake? I glanced at the corners of my apartment, suddenly aware of cameras I couldn't see, attention I couldn't escape. Protected or imprisoned, the line grew thinner every day. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could see was the harbor at night, dark water and darker intentions, and the moment when I'd have to choose what kind of person I wanted to be, if I'd ever really had a choice at all. The day of the meeting crawled by with the agonizing slowness of a nightmare you can't wake from. Victoria arrived at noon with a team that transformed me once more. Simple jeans and a sweater, clothes that looked like the old me but fit better, cost more, screamed money in ways only Dante's world would recognize. They fitted me with a wire so small I couldn't feel it, a microphone hidden in a necklace that looked cheap but probably cost more than my mother's monthly care. Just act natural, Victoria instructed, her fingers cold as she adjusted the device against my collarbone. Get him talking about the theft, about where he's been. We need him to incriminate himself on record. And if he realizes what I'm doing? Her eyes met mine, hard and pragmatic. Then Marcus and his team will intervene. You won't be alone, Miss Mitchell. Mr. Caruso has invested too much to let anything happen to you now. Invested. Like I was property. Assets. Something to be protected not for my sake, but for his. Dante appeared in the doorway, and Victoria's team melted away with the practiced invisibility of people who knew when to disappear. He wore all black tonight, tactical pants, a tight shirt that showed every line of muscle, a leather jacket that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. His hair was swept back, his jaw set, and in his eyes burned something fierce and possessive that made my breath catch. "You don't have to do this," he said, though we both knew it was a lie. "Say the word, and I'll find another way." There is no other way. I stood, squared my shoulders, tried to find the strength he kept insisting I had. He's here because of me. This ends because of me. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that seemed impossible for someone capable of such violence. "When this is over," he stopped, something struggling behind his eyes. "Just come back, Sophia. Come back to me. To him. Not to safety. Not to the apartment or this life or any of it. To him specifically." The words settled over me like chains I was starting to welcome. "I will," I promised, and meant it in ways that terrified me. He kissed my forehead, a gesture so tender it made my eyes burn. Then he stepped back, and the man who'd cooked me dinner and held me while I cried vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. "Marcus will drive you. I'll be there before you arrive. Remember, you're angry with him, betrayed. Make him believe you're there for answers, for closure. Make him think he still has a chance with you." "Does he?" Dante's smile was sharp enough to cut. "No, Kara. He never did. He just hasn't realized it yet." The harbor at night was exactly as foreboding as I'd imagined. Pier 47 jutted into black water that lapped against concrete pylons with sounds like whispered warnings. Warehouses loomed on either side, dark and empty. The kind of place where terrible things happened and no one was around to hear screams. Fog rolled in from the water, thick and cold, wrapping everything in gray uncertainty. Marcus stopped the car 3 blocks away. "I'll be watching," he said, his scarred face impassive. "Mr. Caruso is already in position. You see anything wrong? Anyone besides Ryan, you run. We'll handle the rest." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My legs felt weak as I walked toward the pier, each step echoing too loud in the silence. The necklace sat heavy against my throat, a reminder that Dante was listening, that I wasn't alone even though I felt utterly isolated. Ryan was waiting at the end of the pier, exactly where he'd said he'd be. Even from a distance, I recognized his silhouette, tall, lean, the posture of someone who'd always been too confident for his own good. He wore expensive clothes now, designer jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost what my rent used to be. The boy I'd loved had grown into a man I didn't know. He turned as I approached, and the smile that spread across his face made something twist painfully in my chest. "Soph, God, you came. I wasn't sure you would." His voice, the same voice that had whispered promises in the dark, that had sworn he'd never leave, that had lied about everything that mattered. Hearing it now felt like touching a wound I thought had healed. "You have 5 minutes, I said, stopping 10 feet away. Close enough to hear, far enough to run. Then I'm gone and you never contact me again." "That's fair. I deserve that." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from 1,000 arguments, 1,000 makeups. "I know you hate me. I know I hurt you. But I need you to understand why I did what I did. You stole from the Mafia, Ryan, from Dante Caruso. Do you have any idea what you've done? What you've made me part of?" His face paled even in the dim light. "How do you know about Caruso? Sophia, tell me you haven't what? Haven't been dragged into your mess?" Too late. I let real anger seep into my voice, not hard when it was already simmering beneath the fear. "He came looking for you, found me instead. Found out you'd been using my name, my identity. I could have gone to prison, Ryan, for your crimes. I would never have let that happen. I was protecting you. By abandoning me? By watching me struggle while you lived in Miami spending stolen money?" The words tumbled out, part performance, part genuine fury I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "You sent money to my mother's hospice. Anonymous payments. Did you think that made it okay? That throwing cash at my problems absolved you? I couldn't contact you directly. They were watching. Caruso's people, they were always watching. But I couldn't let your mom suffer. I couldn't let you..." He stepped closer and I stepped back. Soph, please. I did this for us. The money, the new identity, it was supposed to be our way out. I was going to come back for you once things cooled down. We were going to disappear together, start fresh somewhere they couldn't find us. That's a beautiful story. My voice cracked despite my efforts. Was any of it true? Did you ever actually love me, or was I always just convenient, just someone to hide behind? I loved you. He said it with such conviction I almost believed him. I still love you. That's why I'm here, risking everything. I heard about Aurelio's, heard you got fired. I knew something was wrong. Knew Caruso must have found you. He closed the distance between us, grabbed my arms before I could retreat. Come with me. Right now. I have money, documents, everything we need. We can be in Mexico by morning, gone before Caruso even realizes. Let go of me. Sophia, please. I said let go. I wrenched away, and something in my voice must have finally reached him because he dropped his hands, stepped back with confusion written across his features. You've changed. You're different. I grew up. I had to, after you left. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the wire, despite Dante listening, despite Marcus watching from the shadows. You want to know the truth, Ryan? I did love you. Loved you enough that your leaving nearly destroyed me, but I survived. I learned to survive without you, and now? I met his eyes, saw the desperation there, and felt nothing but tired pity. Now I'm done being your escape plan. He got to you. Realization dawned, ugly and accusing. Caruso, what did he do? What did he promise you? Money? Protection? His laugh was bitter. You're sleeping with him, aren't you? Jesus, Sophia. Do you have any idea what he is? What he's capable of? More than you ever were, apparently. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ryan's face twisted, anger replacing the false charm he'd been wearing like a mask. You think he cares about you? You're nothing to him. You're leverage, bait, a way to get to me. The second he doesn't need you anymore, he'll throw you away like garbage. That's what men like him do. And what do men like you do, Ryan? Steal, lie, use women's identities to commit crimes. At least Dante's honest about what he is. Dante. Ryan spat the name like poison. You're on a first-name basis with a man who's killed more people than you can count, who runs drugs and guns and God knows what else through this city. You think you're safe with him? You think he'll protect you? More than you ever did. Movement in the shadows. I saw it before Ryan did, Marcus emerging from behind a warehouse, then another guard from the opposite direction. Ryan saw them too, finally, and understanding crashed over his features like a wave. You set me up. His voice was hollow. You're working with him. This whole thing. You were working with him. I didn't have a choice. The words burst out, genuine and raw. You left me with nothing, Ryan. Nothing but debt and your crimes and a mother dying because I couldn't afford her care. Dante offered me a way to save her, to survive. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to trust me, to wait for me. I did wait. For 6 months, I waited for you to come back, for an explanation, for anything. Tears burned my eyes now, real ones, mourning not for him, but for the girl I'd been who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. You don't get to judge me for surviving the wreckage you left behind. Footsteps on the pier. Slow, measured. The sound of inevitability approaching. Ryan turned, and I saw his face drain of color as Dante emerged from the fog like a nightmare made flesh. He walked with casual confidence, hands in his pockets, flanked by more guards who appeared like ghosts materializing from the darkness. Ryan Torres, Dante's voice carried across the water, smooth as silk and cold as death. We finally meet. Ryan's hand moved toward his jacket, and instantly 5 guns were drawn, aimed at his chest from 5 different angles. He froze, hands slowly rising in surrender. I wouldn't, Dante advised pleasantly. My men are excellent shots, but at this distance there's always the risk of collateral damage, and I'd hate for Sophia to get hurt because you made a stupid decision. He stopped beside me, his presence a wall of protection and possession. His hand settled on my lower back, warm through my sweater. The touch claiming me in front of Ryan with unmistakable clarity. You used her, Ryan said. desperation creeping into his voice. You manipulated her, used her mother's illness to control her. I gave her a choice, something you never did. Dante's voice remained calm, almost bored. I offered her protection, security, a way to save her mother. What did you offer her, Ryan? Lies? Betrayal? The privilege of taking the fall for your crimes? The money was always meant for both of us. The money was always meant for you. Dante cut him off with surgical precision. You forged her signature on a marriage certificate to legitimize your new identity. You used her name to open accounts, to rent apartments, to build a life that would have sent her to prison if anyone had looked too closely. You watched her struggle from a distance and sent guilty payments like buying indulgences for your sins. You never planned to come back for her, Ryan. You came back because I started closing in, and you needed one last escape route. The truth of it hung in the air, undeniable. I looked at Ryan and saw him clearly for the first time. Not the man I'd loved, but the boy who'd never grown up, who'd always looked for the easy way out, who'd sacrifice anyone to save himself. Tell me I'm wrong, Dante continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Tell me you weren't planning to use her one more time, to take her with you just long enough to throw off pursuit, then disappear again when it was convenient. Ryan's silence was answer enough. Dante's hand moved from my back to my shoulder, turning me gently away. Go wait in the car, Kara. You don't need to see this. What are you going to do to him? What needs to be done? His eyes met mine, and in them I saw both the monster and the man, the violence and the strange tenderness he'd shown only to me. He'll answer for what he stole, what he destroyed. The rest is business. Don't kill him. The word surprised me, surprised us both. Please. He's not worth it. Not worth what it would cost you. Something flickered in Dante's expression. Surprise, maybe respect. You still care for him. No. And it was true. Looking at Ryan now, I felt nothing but the ghost of old pain. But I care about you, and I don't want his blood on your hands because of me. For a long moment, Dante studied me. Then he turned to Ryan. You're a lucky man, Torres, luckier than you deserve. The woman you threw away just saved your life. He nodded to Marcus, who moved forward with zip ties and efficiency. Ryan didn't resist as they bound his hands, didn't speak as they searched him and removed the gun he'd been reaching for, the fake passport in his pocket, the evidence of a life built on lies. You'll return what you stole, Dante informed him conversationally. Every dollar, every contact, every piece of information you took. You'll do this from a federal prison, where I'll make sure you're transferred after you cooperate with authorities on several other matters that interest me. If you're smart, you'll take the deal. If you're stupid, you'll refuse. And then Sophia's mercy won't protect you anymore. And her? Ryan looked at me, something broken in his eyes. What happens to Sophia? She stays with me. Dante's hand returned to my back, the touch possessive and unmistakable, where she's safe, where she's cared for, where she'll never have to worry about men like you again. Marcus led Ryan away, the sound of footsteps fading into the fog. Other guards melted back into the shadows, leaving Dante and me alone on the pier, with the sound of water lapping against concrete and the weight of everything that had just shattered and reformed. You could have let me kill him, Dante said quietly. He deserved it. Maybe. But you didn't deserve what it would have made you, not for him. He turned me to face him, both hands framing my face now, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that stole my breath. You're dangerous, Sophia Mitchell, dangerous to everything I've built, everything I am. Is that a problem? His thumb traced my lower lip, the gesture achingly familiar now. It should be. It really should be. Then he kissed me. Not gently. There was nothing gentle about Dante Caruso. He kissed me like he was claiming me, marking me, pouring years of control and violence and need into the press of his lips against mine. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, tasting danger and desire, and the terrifying realization that somewhere between the restaurant and this moment, I'd stopped being his prisoner and started being something else entirely. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. The wire was still recording. Marcus and the others could probably still hear. I didn't care. Take me home, I whispered against his lips. Where's home, Kara? I thought about my old apartment with its broken fixtures and impossible rent. I thought about the borrowed apartment 3 floors below his penthouse. I thought about the space between safety and captivity, between choice and inevitability. Wherever you are, I said, and felt the last wall between us crumble. Home is wherever you are. His smile was fierce and possessive, and held a promise of things I wasn't sure I was ready for, but knew I wanted anyway. Then let's go home, Dante Caruso said, and led me back through the fog toward a future I was finally ready to claim. 3 months later, I stood in front of the mirror in what had become our bedroom. Not the apartment 3 floors down, but Dante's penthouse, his space that had slowly transformed into ours, and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She wore a midnight blue dress that hugged curves I'd forgotten I had, her hair falling in waves that the stylist had spent an hour perfecting, her eyes bright with something that might have been happiness if I'd remembered what that looked like. The woman in the mirror belonged in Dante's world now. The question was whether I'd lost myself in the transformation or finally found who I was always meant to be. You're thinking too hard again. Dante's voice came from the doorway, warm with amusement. He leaned against the frame in a tuxedo that should have been illegal, all sharp lines and contained power. His hair swept back to reveal those features I'd learned by heart. I can practically hear your brain working from here. I'm allowed to think. Dangerously philosophical on our engagement party night, he crossed to me, his hand settling on my waist with the casual possession that had become as natural as breathing. Having second thoughts, Kara? I met his eyes in the mirror. About you? No. About becoming part of all this? I gestured vaguely at the penthouse, at the life we'd built. Sometimes. Honest as always. He pressed a kiss to my shoulder, the touch sending familiar heat through my veins. That's why I love you. The words still surprised me, even though he'd said them a dozen times since that night at the pier. Dante Caruso, a man who dealt in violence and power, who commanded an empire built on fear and respect, loved me. The girl who'd spilled water on his $15,000 suit. The woman who'd been invisible until he'd looked at her and decided to see. I love you too, I said, because it was true. Complicated and dangerous and probably a little insane, but true nonetheless. Even though you're a criminal and possessive, and you have cameras in every room, for security purposes. You watch me sleep. Can you blame me? His arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. You're beautiful when you sleep, peaceful. It's the only time you stop fighting yourself. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Guests are arriving. Mr. Caruso, if you're making Miss Mitchell late to her own party, I'll be very disappointed. Dante laughed, reading over my shoulder. She's terrifying. She's efficient. There's a difference. Ready to face the vultures? He turned me in his arms, his expression sobering. I know this isn't what you imagined for yourself. A party filled with dangerous people celebrating an engagement that started as a business arrangement. If you want to leave, we can leave. We can go anywhere you want. And miss the chance to see you in a tux all night? I straightened his bow tie, let my fingers linger against his chest. I'm not going anywhere, Dante. I made my choice. I keep making it. Every day. Even knowing what I am, what I do, I'd asked myself that question 1,000 times in the past 3 months. Dante had never hidden his world from me. The meetings with dangerous men, the phone calls in Italian that ended with people disappearing, the casual way violence was discussed over breakfast. He'd given me every reason to run, every opportunity to leave with enough money to start over somewhere safe, but he'd also given me my mother. Her treatments had worked better than anyone expected. She was in remission now, living in a beautiful assisted care facility where she painted and gardened and smiled like she'd forgotten what pain felt like. He'd given me education, tutors in Italian and business, classes I'd always wanted to take but couldn't afford. He'd given me safety in a world that had only ever offered struggle, and somewhere between obligation and survival, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with a man who killed people and cooked me dinner and held me through nightmares about Ryan and poverty and all the ways I'd almost drowned. Especially knowing what you are, I said. You've never lied to me, Dante, never pretended to be something you're not. That's more than most people can say. His kiss was soft this time, tender in a way that made my chest ache. Then let's go show them their future queen. The party was held in a restaurant Dante owned. Not Aurelio's, thank God, but something larger, more opulent, rented out entirely for the night. Crystal chandeliers cast diamond light across marble floors. Tables groaned under Italian delicacies, and wine that cost more per bottle than my mother's monthly care. And everywhere, dangerous people in expensive clothes, predators pretending to be civilized. They watched me as we entered, Dante's hand possessive on my lower back. Calculating, assessing, trying to understand how a nobody waitress had captured the attention of one of the most powerful men in the city. I held my head high and let them wonder. Let them see that I wasn't afraid anymore. Victoria appeared with 2 champagne flutes and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look radiant, Miss Mitchell, though I suppose we should start calling you Mrs. Caruso-to-be. Sophia is fine. Oh, Sophia is never just fine. Dante took the champagne, handed me a glass. She's extraordinary. They'll learn that soon enough. The night passed in a blur of introductions I'd forget, and conversations in code I was learning to decipher. Dante never left my side, his presence a constant shield against the sharks circling in designer suits. His men, Marcus and the others who'd become familiar faces, watched from strategic positions, always vigilant, always ready. You've caused quite a stir, a voice said, cultured and amused. I turned to find an older man, silver-haired and distinguished, watching me with eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of Dante's. Dominic Caruso, Dante's uncle. Sophia Mitchell. I shook his offered hand, noting the strength in his grip despite his age. I know who you are. The whole family knows who you are. He glanced at Dante, who'd tensed almost imperceptibly. My nephew doesn't bring women into his life. Doesn't make them part of the business. You must be quite special. Or quite stubborn. Dominic's laugh was genuine. I like her, Dante. She's got spine. You'll need that married to this one, Uncle. Dante's voice carried a warning. Peace. Dominic raised his hands. I'm just saying. The last woman who got close to you ended up... That's enough. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Dante's hand tightened on my waist, protective and possessive. The past is past. Sophia is my future. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Something unspoken passed between them. Then Dominic nodded slowly. Understood. Welcome to the family, Sophia. May you survive it. He walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. Dante's jaw was clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek that told me whatever memory Dominic had referenced wasn't one he wanted to share. What did he mean? I asked softly. About the last woman? Not tonight. He pulled me toward the dance floor as a string quartet began playing something slow and Italian. Tonight is about us. About the future. The past can stay buried where it belongs. He held me close as we danced, his body a solid wall of warmth and safety. Other couples joined us, dangerous men with beautiful women who wore expensive jewelry like armor. We moved through them like we were the only people in the room, and maybe in that moment, we were. I need to tell you something, Dante murmured against my hair. Ryan took the deal. He's cooperating with the FBI. He'll be in prison for the next 15 years, minimum. I should have felt something. Relief, maybe, or closure. Instead, there was just emptiness where Ryan used to live in my thoughts. Good. He can't hurt anyone else that way. He asked about you. Wanted to know if you were happy. What did you tell him? The truth. That you're exactly where you want to be. He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes soft with an emotion that still took my breath away. Are you, Sophia? Happy? I thought about the girl who'd been invisible, who'd worked herself to exhaustion and still couldn't make ends meet, who'd loved a man who'd thrown her away like garbage. I thought about the woman I'd become. Stronger, fiercer, loved by someone who saw all my flaws and chose me anyway. Yes, I said simply. Against all odds and better judgment, I'm happy. His smile was blinding. Good. Because I have a present for you. Dante, you've already given me everything. Not everything. He led me off the dance floor, through a side door into a private room where Victoria waited with a laptop and paperwork. I had my lawyers draw up some documents. The restaurant, Aurelio's. I'm signing it over to you. Full ownership. You can run it however you want, hire whoever you want, make it yours. I stared at him. You're giving me a restaurant? You loved working there. Before I ruined it for you, his hand cupped my cheek. This way, you can build something that's entirely yours. A business separate from mine. Clean money, legal money, something that's just Sophia's, not Dante's wife or his property or any of that, just yours. Tears burned my eyes. He understood. Somehow, this man who controlled everything understood that I needed something of my own. Something I could build without his shadow over it. I don't know what to say. Say you'll make it the best restaurant in the city. Say you'll hire people who need second chances the way you did. Say you'll pour all that fire and determination into something beautiful. He kissed me softly. Say you'll let me eat there for free. I laughed through the tears. Thank you. For seeing me. For this. For everything. Thank you for not running. His forehead pressed against mine. For staying when any sane person would have left. For loving me despite everything I am. Victoria cleared her throat delicately. Hate to interrupt, but there are about 200 people waiting for the happy couple to cut a cake. We returned to the party, to the noise and the danger dressed in silk. Dante made a toast that had people laughing and raising glasses. We cut a cake that was almost too beautiful to eat. And through it all, I felt the weight of eyes watching, judging, waiting to see if I'd survive in their world. Later, much later, when the party had ended and the dangerous people had returned to their dangerous lives, Dante and I stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city, the same city that had tried to crush me, that had taken everything and offered nothing in return. From up here, it looked small, manageable, mine. Any regrets? Dante asked, his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The water spilled on expensive suits, the fear and the debt and the impossible choices, Ryan's betrayal and Dante's offer, and the pier where I'd finally chosen myself. Only one. I turned in his arms. I regret that I didn't spill that water on you sooner. His laugh was rich and warm, best accident that ever happened to me. Was it? I traced the line of his jaw, this man who'd become my whole world. An accident? Something flickered in his eyes. Victoria checked the schedule that night. You weren't supposed to work that section. Someone changed the assignments at the last minute. Who? Me. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. I'd seen you before, Sophia, months before that night. You served me breakfast once, didn't even look twice at me. You were so tired, so invisible. But there was something, I don't know. I couldn't stop thinking about you, so I arranged for you to be working that night. I didn't plan the water. That was pure you. But the meeting? That was all me. I should have been angry. Should have felt manipulated. Instead, I felt something else entirely. The click of pieces falling into place. Of understanding that some cages were chosen. Some prisons were sanctuaries. And some dangerous men loved you enough to orchestrate fate. You're terrible, I said, pulling him down for a kiss. I'm yours. He corrected against my lips. There's a difference. And there was. All the difference in the world. We went inside as the sun began to rise, painting the city in shades of gold and possibility. Dante carried me to bed, our bed, and made love to me with the tender ferocity that was uniquely his. And afterward, wrapped in his arms with the sound of his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I finally understood what home meant. Not a place. Not safety or security or any of the things I'd been chasing for so long. Home was this. The choice to stay when you could leave. The courage to love someone impossible. The strength to build something beautiful from the wreckage of who you used to be. I love you, Dante Caruso, I whispered into the darkness. My dangerous, possessive, perfectly imperfect man. And I love you, Sophia Mitchell, he murmured back, his arms tightening around me. My brave, stubborn, absolutely extraordinary woman. My future wife. My home. Outside, the city woke to another day. Inside, we slept peacefully. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and chosen to stay despite, or maybe because of, all the reasons they shouldn't. The girl who'd been invisible was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is spill water on the wrong person's suit. Or maybe, just maybe, it was exactly the right person all along. 6 months later, Aurelio's reopened under new management. The sign above the door read, "Sophia's," in elegant script. Inside, the kitchen hummed with efficiency, the dining room glowed with warmth, and every table was filled with people who'd heard about the restaurant run by the woman who'd married Dante Caruso and somehow kept her soul intact. I moved through the space with confidence now, no longer invisible, no longer afraid. My mother sat at table 12, the private section, laughing with friends she'd made at the care facility, healthy and happy and proud of the daughter who'd survived. And at the bar, watching me with eyes that held a universe of love and possession and dangerous promise, sat my husband. Dante had a bourbon in hand, and that small smile that was only ever for me, and when our eyes met across the room, I felt the same jolt of electricity that had struck that first night. Some love stories begin with chance meetings and stolen glances. Ours began with spilled water and threats, with survival and choice, with a cage that became a kingdom. And I wouldn't change a single moment, not even the fear, especially not the fear, because it led me here, to this life, to this man, to this version of myself I'd never known I could be. The Mafia boss had threatened the waitress at the restaurant. Her reaction had been pure genius. She'd fallen in love with him and lived to tell the tale.